Coogs House. The Houston Cougars are back atop the Big 12, had a great bounce back game over Oklahoma State, and everyone is upset and yelling about an old man just wanting to go see his grandkids.
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Cougs, the daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, here to break down all things Cougs. If you're a U of H fan or just a hater who came to stop by, please be sure to subscribe down below. Then we listen to Cougs in your newsfeed each and every day. We appreciate you making Locked On Cougs your first listen of the day. Found us on YouTube. Welcome back to the YouTube channel. It's so good to see you again. Remember to subscribe, like, comment the videos to help us get to the next big marker. The next one of those is at 2,000. It's the next 250 marker. So hit like, hit subscribe, help us get there. Like and comment on this video to let us know you're in that contest. We're almost there at this point. We're like 1975. So if you don't know what to comment, you're just in awe about what happened with the Houston Cougar basketball game, I can't believe they're sitting atop Big 12, tell us in the comments if you've ever gotten a technical foul or a personal conduct penalty or anything of the sort. I can completely and honestly say I got one as a player, as a sophomore in high school, and I've gotten two as a coach. The second was as recently as this past January. We did win all three games, though. And much like those three games, the Houston Cougars went on to beat Oklahoma State in a big, big fashion on Tuesday night. Now, I guess they technically won by just 16 at the end of the game. They led by as many as 29 in the late second half. Some things kind of slid down the stretch. We're going to break down this game bit by bit. We will talk about the standings in the Big 12 and at the national landscape level because those things continue to shift and change every single day. The second segment, I want to spend some talking about what actually happened in this game. The Houston Cougars cruise on to victory, fairly substantial, fairly important victory for a number of reasons, and interesting to see how it played out in that segment. But the first segment, I do want to talk some about Kelvin Sampson and his ejection. Now, Kelvin Sampson, if you did not see the game, at about the 15-minute mark of the second half, Houston is up 20. Let me make sure I got my math here right. Houston is up before the free throws. Calculator. Before the free throws, 21. Okay. And suddenly, there's a no call to get to 21. It was 23. There's a no call under the basket in which the Oklahoma State big man, his name is not important for this part, shoves Jamal Shed in the back twice to get open. It shoves him in the upper back, the part where his neck bends funny, to get open, catches the ball open, puts the ball in for a quick layup. And suddenly, Fran Fraschilla and the ESPN broadcast stops everything and goes, whoa, what's happening? And you see off the corner of the screen, Kelvin Sampson marching across, livid, outrageously, just screaming at each of the three referees on the floor. Not just Tony Padilla, who was the baseline official who would have had jurisdiction over that particular play, but over each of the three referees. Now, he was subsequently and very quickly tossed from the game. They had tossed him before he was done talking. He just continued to yell and let them have it on his way out. Quantis and Hollis did a great job, assistant coaches, of getting him off the floor. He ultimately went to the sideline. Oklahoma State made their free throws, cut the game to 17. 50 minutes left, 17 points. Kind of anybody's ball game, honestly. Kelvin Sampson took over. Head coach in waiting, looked like he deserved it. Houston took the fuel and fire and explosion that Kelvin Sampson led with and wanted to take that 17-point lead and make it a 29-point lead 5 game minutes later. Now, again, subs would come in, free throws would happen. Oklahoma State ultimately did cut it to 16 in the end, and you could argue that without that 4-point, 5-point swing, whatever you want to call it, it might have been over 20. But once Houston went up 29, 5 minutes after Kelvin got taken out of the game, it was very, very clear that Houston could pick their score. Houston could pick what Oklahoma State's score was. Houston was in complete control of that basketball game. Now, coach gets tossed. It's the first question of the press conference every single time. So Joseph Duarte, the Houston Chronicle, leads the post-game media availability with Kelvin Sampson asking about it. And the full video is online. The University of Houston athletics staff puts that on YouTube. And it's a longer answer, but the line that sticks out, the line that everyone is sticking with, the line that I quote on Twitter and several people have enjoyed interacting with is that Kelvin Sampson said, quote, "It's a $25,000 fine if I tell the truth. So don't ask me. I learned that from Mack Rhoades." Mack Rhoades being currently, I guess he has his Houston ties, but currently the Baylor athletic director. Now, I think what's interesting is he's saying Mack Rhoades, who just got fined 25 grand from the Big 12. Rhoades said that the league, as the Big 12, needs to do better when we think about our officiating, and called the night that his head coach at Baylor, Coach Drew, got tossed was an embarrassment for the league. That's the extent of how bad his post-game press conference was. His post-game commentary as an AD was, I should say. That's it. And he got fined 25 grand. So I completely understand Kelvin Sampson saying, no, I'm not saying anything. I'm not giving up 25 grand. For what it's worth, that Scott Drew game had been his first time in 21 years that he had been thrown out of a game, and he was also up double digits. Now, Sampson said he hadn't been thrown out of a game since the Washington State days. Now, I will say that this is a ref conundrum across the Big 12. The best conference all college basketball by leaps and bounds has truly atrocious and questionable refereeing down the stretch of a number of games, whether it's Iowa State, Kansas State, TCU, Baylor, TCU, Kansas, to open Big 12 conference play, right? Just the process there of stopping the game for that call. Kansas State just last night. And frankly, I think some of it ends up going Houston's way, but there was plenty of questionable stuff at the end of the Houston and BYU game in Provo as well. Again, Houston takes his energy, runs away at the game. It's okay. But a more macro level question about this is, why does the best conference in college basketball have atrocious refereeing, where coaches that are usually energetic, enthusiastic, and passionate, but not getting tossed like Scott Drew or Kelvin Sampson, are out here getting tossed for pointing out the danger of what's happening? Because I think that that's what we have to settle on with what Kelvin Sampson was doing in this game, is regardless of what you think about criticizing officials, and regardless of what you think about letting kids play or whatever, the foul Baylor committed, or the foul Oklahoma State committed that did not get called right before the technical, was dangerous. It jerked Jamal Shed's neck around twice. And as the ESPN broadcast showed, the play before that, Oklahoma State also took the legs out from under Javier Francis as he flew through for what would have been an alley-oop dunk. Also dangerous. We just saw Javier Francis, again, in a similar situation, and it was not called, for he was skying up for a rebound in that instance against Kansas, had the same kind of thing happen. He ended up missing the rest of the game after a big fall on his hip. Francis survived this fall. He was fine. But that sequence of plays set coach off, because that's not about, fouls and ticky-tack and this, because Sampson has his guys adjust to that kind of stuff. I'm a firm believer. I've been watching coach for 10 years now. I enjoyed watching coach at Oklahoma some too, if I'm being completely honest. But he gets how to coach through that. It's when these kinds of things happen, and it's dangerous. It's not just about impact on the game. It's about dangerous for his guys. Because if that foul is not called, then that player's going to do it until it is. And it might not have hurt anybody the first time, but the second, the third, the fifth, etc., that's when those kinds of plays get dangerous. And I totally understand and appreciate Kelvin going to bat for his guys. Jamal Shed said as much in the postgame as well, right? Guys, see that guy feed off that. That's why the lead went from 17 to 29 in 5 game minutes, right? Bing, bang, boom. Houston never looked back. I will say, I thought it was interesting, and this is kind of what the cold open was about, that when asked what he did he catch the end of the game? His son Kellen led the way. They showed a clip of, or a thing on the screen of his daughter Lauren also cheering them on. What'd you see about the end of the game? He's like, I didn't watch the end of the game. He was in the back playing with his grandkids. Kelvin was in the back playing babysitter with his grandkids while the Houston Cougars are going on to beat the Oklahoma State Cowboys like a drum. Now, I do want to talk about how that beating went, but I also know that there's a lot of stuff happening all over the great United States and things that, frankly, with Houston not playing until Saturday, you might want to go do. And if you need tickets to go do that, you need to go do it at GameTime because they have a great app with all kinds of great deals and prices and all kinds of cool tools to help make sure you're getting the best deal and the best seat available to whatever event you want to go to around the H. Now, I think it's really cool. You can just tell them like a vague section and row and let them do the seat picking for you. Get an average savings of 18%. If you're like, wait a second, I can check this out first. They have a cool way for you to see what the view looks like from that seat for that type of show at that type of venue. So music, plays, musicals, sports, whatever the case may be, comedy shows, they'll find a way to show you what things will look like. Right now, they're doing all kinds of guesswork, taking out guesswork across buying tickets. So you can take out the guesswork from buying tickets to GameTime. And right now, all GameTime users get $100 off of a big game ticket with code Vegas100. Terms apply. Just download the GameTime app today and use code Vegas100, VEGAS100 for $100 off a big game ticket. Or if you're not going to the game, you can use code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off your first purchase. Download game today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. The big game in Houston on Tuesday night was the Houston Cougars getting back on track. Houston fell to Kansas in Lawrence on Saturday and had turned around and play on Tuesday night. Now, we saw the emotional letdown that Kansas had going from that Houston game, then going the road and having to travel to play Kansas State and losing on Monday night, right? Tuesday night, you could argue that, well, as Houston setting themselves up for a very similar kind of evening, right? They had to travel back home. They have to hear about getting beat. The film session, I'm sure, was brutal, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Instead, several Houston Cougars found their form against the Oklahoma State Cowboys, none bigger than Jamal Shed. Jamal Shed is the physical, spiritual leader of this team in a lot of different ways. But on the floor, they play well when he plays well, and I don't think I'm giving out any secrets when I say that. Shed finished with 23 points, just one turnover. He had 3 steals, 4 assists, went 5 of 5 from the stripe, and frankly, I don't know that stat line does justice to how much control he had over this game. In the 29 minutes he was on the floor, the game went exactly as Jamal Shed wanted it to be. If he wanted to be faster, he sped it up. If he wanted to be slower, he slowed it down. If he wanted to make sure they got J1 Roberts involved, they did. If he wanted to make sure that Oklahoma State did not get Javon Smalls involved, they didn't. He found all kinds of different ways to dictate the game from start to finish. So much so that Oklahoma State's head coach, after the game, actually called him a first-team All-American and said he plays like the Big 12 Conference Player of the Year, right? High praise for a guy that's new to the conference and coming from the American Athletic Conference, right? Jamal was in complete control of this game and, frankly, saved the Kansas game. You could argue he's in complete control of every game this season. There are moments in the Kansas game where he did not look like himself, although I think that's been almost, I don't want to say blown out of proportion, because it's like we forgot a couple of the stretches that he did some really important things to cut leads from 19 to 10 and stuff like that. But he was back to himself for the entirety of his time on the floor in this game on Tuesday. Great to see him back. Great to see him get another game where he's over 20 in the Big 12. Before Big 12 play, he'd kind of been orchestrating, running the offense, etc. In Big 12 play, he's asserted himself as a scorer and really added another dimension to what Houston does on offense. The other story of this game was that Houston found their big guys in foul trouble. J1 Roberts fouled out, playing just 12 minutes. Javier Francis had 4 fouls. He played just 21 minutes. Jojo Tugler had 4 fouls. He played just 13 minutes. The big and interesting thing in this one was, after seeing what happened against Kansas last Saturday, you actually saw Ced Lath get a couple of first half minutes to kind of spell some of these big guys and get when they were in foul trouble. Now, Lath is typically In my coaching career, we call him a 30-30 guy. You're up 30, you're down 30, you put that kind of guy in the game. He's a young and developing basketball player. He and Ryan Elfin come in together, typically, right? But in the first half, Houston needed some size and, frankly, was already kind of playing a little small and decided to go with Lath for a couple minutes to kind of spell some of these guys so Francis could, get to halftime with just 3 fouls, or so Tugler could get to halftime with just his 3 fouls, or what have you, right? Now, I will say that I think the guy that was shaken the most by the foul trouble was J1 Roberts. He had 4 points, no rebounds, just 12 minutes, did foul out. And I could sit here and make up a bunch of positives. I could sit here and talk about how, he'll be fine. What I will say is he's a veteran. He's been a starter on the team for a long time. And on Saturday, he'll have his hands full with Victor Lakin in Cincinnati. And honestly, having a fairly light day on the legs on Tuesday night might not be the worst thing. I completely and fully trust him to get things back on track. And frankly, like I said, a road game against Lakin and Cincinnati, they played us very well last year, frankly, as well as any conference road team, save Memphis. And I think that you'll see an energized J1 ready to come back. I thought Tugler looked like he was trying to make up for some stuff. He was almost like too scattered, too energetic, too all over the place. And I think that's what ultimately led to him having so few minutes, so many fouls. I thought Javier Francis played extremely well. I wouldn't have called 1 or 2 of those fouls on him near the rim. I thought he had verticality and kind of kept his hips out of it. But regardless, you could argue Francis had one of his best games as a Cougar in this one, even though fouls limited his minutes to just 21 points. 8 points and 6 rebounds doesn't do justice to the impact he had on offense, because whenever he rolled, he absorbed a lot of attention, and that opened up other guys. Houston shot 40% from 3, 6 of 15 from behind the arc, and I don't think they do that without Javier Francis rolling and taking up some help side guys, right? On defense, I think Francis, while he did not have a block to his name officially, I think did a great job of deterring, altering shots near the rim. And frankly, his presence after a few of those determinants led to shots not being at the rim, right? And so I think that his impact is difficult to measure statistically. The color commentary, agreed with me as well on TV. So I don't think I'm making stuff up out of thin air, but I think he had the best night by far of the 3. And it's interesting because had he not had foul trouble with Roberts and Tugler having foul trouble, he might have had that kind of impact over more like 30 minutes. We haven't gotten to see that a whole lot out of him because you see alternate lineups come in when everyone's got their fouls regulated or regular. And so I was encouraged. I'm excited. I want to see what he does against Lakin on Saturday against Cincinnati. Other big story in this one, Emanuel Sharp is back. Emanuel Sharp plays much better at home. We talked about some going into the Kansas game. They were at home, and Sharp played well. I guess I should say Sharp shot well. Sharp plays well lots of places. The shots seem to be falling at home. I'm sorry, Emanuel. Let me clarify there. Emanuel Sharp shoots really well at home, plays really well everywhere. I've been thoroughly impressed by the growth he's had as a sophomore this year. But Sharp had 16 points, 3 of 5 from behind the arc, had a couple great, strong, tough drives. And the thing that I think is hard to measure here in a game where the foul calls were questionable, to say the least, and so, he had a couple times where he attacked the rim and did not get the call, but very much put his body on the line to try and get 2 points. He did get a call on one of them, 1-2 from the stripe after that. I had a couple of and-one layups, a couple of made layups in there as well. Going through that contact, I say and-one layups because it probably should have been. He's doing a really, really good job this year, just as far as being explosive and powerful. Remember, major leg injuries as a senior in high school. Last year's his first year, is kind of playing his way back into shape after that injury. And now we're going to see that Emanuel kid that we thought we were getting, the kid that, his dad is an international pro, the kid that was Mr. Florida as a junior in high school. Like that kind of kid. We're getting to see him more and more each week. I wish he shot as well on the road as he does at home, but there's, again, a lot of games left to fix that. Last but not least, on what happened in this game that I think we have to discuss is the Malik Wilson showing. Malik Wilson showed up in First half minutes, because of foul trouble with the bigs, he played kind of a 4 spot. He showed up in second half minutes when Jamal Shed could sit down because Houston was up nearly 30 as more of a point guard type guy. And for what it's worth, Malik Wilson found his opportunities to score the basketball. He had 12 points in this game, was 5 of 10 from the field, did miss his only 3. He's not really a 3-point shooter. But I thought it was interesting in looking at his game that he typically is the guy that's in at the end of the game shortly before Ryan Elvin and Ced Lath. And people were like, he needs to pass the ball to Ryan. Well, when he got to play with the first group, he showed that he's athletic enough to score with anyone. You kind of saw the guy that played at Louisiana Lafayette, the guy that got recruited to transfer from Lafayette to Texas Tech. That guy showed up in a big way as well. Lots of other performances you could tout in this one. But on the whole, it was just a Cougar show culture win from start to finish. I'll look around the league and look at some teams that have different cultures and see how that's working out for them, to say the least. But first, I don't know if you guys have heard about this big thing called the Super Bowl this weekend, but it is Super Bowl time of year. And over at FanDuel, they've got all kinds of great ways to help you get in on the action in Las Vegas. Now, I will say, I'm a weirdo about the Super Bowl. I say this every time I ask to talk about it. But I want to sit in a quiet room, the TV turned up with the volume on. I want a full spread of wings and pizza and everything. And I don't want people to talk to me because I want to hear the commercials, because those are the best commercials every year. I want to see the game. I don't want to miss a second of action. I want to see the halftime show. I mean, Usher, come on. I want to see every single bit of the theatrical performance that is the Super Bowl. And sometimes I want to get even more interested in what's going on. And that's when people like FanDuel come in and help out. Now, they've got all kinds of cool props, like anytime touchdowns, how long the national anthem is the coin flip heads or tails, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Honestly, the one that I'm taking the most, though, is the Chiefs at plus 2.5. If you want to ask why, Travis Kelce dates Taylor Swift's mom went to, you guessed it, University of Houston. That's a close enough connection to me. Now, call me a Swiftie, call me whatever you want. I'm telling you, though, that if you go to FanDuel.com right now, you put down $5 or more on a pick and it wins, you can get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. That's awesome. Awesome deals there at FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/locked on, LOCKEDON. Make everyone more FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so across the league, there was a couple of interesting results on Tuesday night. First of all, I guess we should back up, and we did say it on Tuesday's episode, but Monday night, the emotional letdown for Kansas was after beating Houston. You could argue it's their Super Bowl. In Fog Allen, they turned and lost Kansas State on the road Monday night. Now, Kansas State went nuts. Jerome Tang is a great coach. I will say I loved that they did not storm the floor for that one. That was one they did not storm the floor for in Manhattan. I wonder if Houston will do the same when they beat Kansas in March. We'll see. But interesting ones across the rest of the Big 12 on Tuesday night. The headliner, I should say, was that Baylor beat Texas Tech, moving Baylor kind of firmly into third on the conference leaderboard, and Texas Tech down closer to, I guess they're technically, Baylor beats second. Anyway, win percentages. Houston sits at 6-3. Houston sits at 7-3. Baylor sits at 6-3. Kansas sits at 6-4. Texas Tech sits at 5-4. So win percentage of those are all kind of jumbled up, but that win is impactful as far as the top of the Big 12 goes. Houston obviously goes to Baylor later this month and can kind of put their own imprint on those standings. Kansas will do the same, heading to Lubbock in the month of February. So that will all get jumbled up, but that big game again, Texas Tech losing at Baylor with that weird camera angle they have there in Waco now. I think that's probably the one that goes down as the most impactful in the present tense. And the big picture, though, in the Big 12, and this might just be a one-season thing because of who's involved, Iowa State went to Austin and beat UT Austin. UT Austin's having a bad year relative to expectations, I think it's safe to say. Frankly, I mean, they keep losing close games, so I guess you could argue that there's got to be some point that turns around if you're a fan of that program. But truthfully, I think they look like a school that kind of shouldn't have had those expectations. Moreover, the same freshman that beat Houston at the end of the game from Iowa State, Mama Klovic, I think that's how you pronounce his name. He had 13 points to lead the way for Iowa State. It was really a balanced effort across the board. The Lipsy kid, the point guard, had it was like 12, 7, and 5, nearly a triple-double, right? He impacted the game in a bunch of different ways as well. And then elsewhere in the Big 12, Oklahoma, which I did not realize was unranked until today, thumped BYU, who was ranked in Norman. JV McCollum is a baller. He's a really, really good player up there in Norman. Key guard for them. He had 20 points in that one. Can flat score the basketball. We'll talk about that matchup when we get to it in early March. But Oklahoma might have fallen out of the top 25, but don't think they're not a good basketball team. That JV McCollum guy can win basketball games. So I'm interested to see how Houston match up with them later this season. Now, Houston's not just competing to be a top Big 12, although they sit up there on their own at this point. They're looking nationally at beating other teams in the top 25 and the top 5. Houston on Monday's AP poll fell all the way from 4th to 5th after losing to Kansas over the weekend. UConn, the number 1 team in all polls, beat Butler by single digits at home on Tuesday night. So I think that's interesting to keep an eye on, kind of look at what's going on with UConn this week and next. Carolina, after beating Duke over the weekend, notably lost to Clemson, of all people. And so they'll slide some out of the way for Houston. South Carolina beat Ole Miss by just 3 points. That's also an interesting result from Tuesday that could shake up the top 25, depending on how the rest of the week goes. And so Houston, even after losing by a whopping 13 points in Fog Allen, is kind of sitting pretty on Tuesday night, going into Wednesday with a couple of days off before heading to Cincinnati to play on Saturday. Now, a couple of programming notes. One, I said on Twitter that I missed the first half of this game live because I did, and I said I'd talk about it on the show. So here's me talking about the end. My wife is sick. We have an 8-month-old. That's weird to say. He's 8 months old. And I coach high school basketball. So what that's typically meant is that, we alternate nights of taking care of this, taking care of that. We are very good partners and all those kinds of things. But when I have to watch a Houston game, I'll do the night before and the night after, but that night I get to sit down or whatever. I get home from practice about 6:15, 6:30 every day. So I might have missed the start just because I got to get home from practice, but you feel me on that, right? But with my wife being sick and us trying to make sure we keep little man from getting sick, I am sleeping on the couch, so like right there. Little man, I had to take to and from all the things and keep him, even though it typically wouldn't have been my night because Houston's playing. It was my night because it had to be. So I missed the first half live, came back and watched after the fact. And that's when I was like, is Ced Lath on the floor? What? Is he on the floor? So that's why I missed the game live. I said to say that if something happens to me, and I also get sick this week because that's how illness seems to work when you have a newborn, I'll do my best to keep recording. If I need to take a day or two, please understand that I'm trying to not have to. Other thing is, this is kind of several days out, but the basketball team I coach has the big end of season conference state championship tournament this weekend, a little private school. So it's just like a 1 weekend tournament for schools in DFW area, Houston area, a couple Austin schools, etc. That's happening over the weekend. And so if things go well for us, I actually will probably miss like the entirety of Cincinnati and Houston live and have to talk about it after the fact. Frankly, kind of regardless how things go to us, I guess it'll be on a bus. So that'll be hard. But and so hopefully, I'm not able to do a live tweet through that with that one. I do always try to watch the game before listening to other people talk about it to kind of get my own thoughts and opinions about things. I can't avoid the score. I can't say like I can avoid what happens. But anyway, that's the programming update for the week. I want to do some recruit talk with signing day and stuff like that later this week. I'm still working on a guest to come on and help me out. That's recruiting is not my bag, but I know it's something you're interested in. So I want to help get that information to you. I know that I also am trying to work on a Cincinnati show, a preview of that game for Saturday, because that could be a sizable game for Houston. Look to try and steal a road game. Cincinnati's a good opponent, so I'm trying to get you a preview of that one as well. That means a lot of content coming your way this week, because we do the best to get you something every day here, Locked on Cougs. Make sure to subscribe, like, comment on the videos. Tell us what you think about the Houston Cougars as they continue to lead the Big 12 Conference in basketball. Thank you all so much for making us your first listen. Locked on Cougs is a proud Locked on podcast. Whether it's your team, our Cougs, every day. Go Cougs.